Grades of Green students, my name is Emily G, and today we're joined by our chair of the board, Deborah Hockemeyer. We're really excited to have her today in our New York office for our Spread the Word webinar. So we created this webinar because we were getting a lot of really great questions about how to expand the idea of a movement, how to mobilize people, and how to spread the word even bigger than our school communities. So we put together some tips, tricks, and best practices for how to make that possible. And then we got some really great questions at our youth corps meetups and from other students as well, asking specific questions about activities that we're working on and how to really take it to the next level. So we're excited to have Deborah join us today to help answer some of those questions directly from our students too.
Absolutely.
So what we're going to go over today is first, where are we now in the school year process? Why are we doing this and how can we add in the why? How do we choose an audience? How do we then message? And what platforms and modes of communication are the best? After that, Deborah's going to answer some specific questions from our students. And throughout any of the Facebook Live webinar, as you have more questions, feel free to comment in the comment section. And if we have time at the end, we'll also answer those questions. If something's really resonating with you, feel free to do the thumbs up or the like, and do a heart if any part of the webinar has been really helpful as well. And we'll make sure to add even more of that into the next one too. So the first one that we're going to go over today is we've now created these great Grades of Green teams with our schools all across the world. So now what are we going to do with those teams and how are we going to mobilize those teams throughout the rest of the school year? Well, by now in March, we've really created those teams. All of our teams have selected an activity or an action that they're working on throughout the year. You've met with your advisor, maybe it's Jordan, Emily, Kathy, Karen, Jay. Give a heart if you've already met with an advisor. And if you haven't been paired with an advisor yet, feel free to comment in the comment section and we will also assign you and pair you with an advisor as well. For the schools that have met with your advisor and picked an activity, you've already set your goal for that activity. So for example, if you're part of our trash-free lunch challenge, maybe you set a diversion goal or the percentage of waste that you hope to reduce throughout the school year. If you're a youth corps student, maybe you've selected a goal of how many kids you hope to have in an eco fair. So whatever Grades of Green activity you've selected, there's a goal that's associated with your activity. Now we're at the beginning or the end of the school year where you're completing those activities, you're working on it, and now it's time to really spread the word and kick it up a notch. So the rest of this webinar will be how do you communicate that out to your community and how can you mobilize the rest of your community to maybe take it even to a bigger level, at a city level, at a state level, maybe even a country level as well. So today we're going to be talking about spreading the word. The first one is talking a little bit about why. So whenever we're talking about spreading the word, we think it's so important to first start with why it's important. And a little bit before the webinar, Deborah filled me in on a really great tip that I loved about starting the why with why it's important to the other person as well. Deborah?
Yeah, I think, the reason you get involved with it is there's something that resonates with you. And then when you go to spread the word, you really want to tune into different audiences and what their why might be. Because when you can approach them from what they're most interested in doing, then you're really going to find people that want to hop on board and join you.
Oh, I love that one. So for example, when we're talking about the ripple effect of starting with students and then maybe communicating with families and then bringing it to the broader community.
Absolutely. Everybody will have their own perspective on the topic. And when you speak to that different audience, you want to speak to them, into their perspective.
I love that one. So once you've decided on what that why is and looked at a few of the different audiences that you might be talking to, there really should be a desired action or goal when we're talking to someone as well. So for example, this is a picture of Mott Hall, which is a school in the Bronx here in New York. And their why and what they were trying to do is reduce waste. Also, congrats to Mott Hall that actually reduced their waste by over 50% this year. They reduced down 50 bags, 50 bag reduction per week since the beginning of the school year.
That's amazing.
And when they were talking about their why was a little bit different. for school audience, for their students versus their teachers, and how to approach that. So I loved how they kind of shifted that why and their audience message when talking to teachers and students. So sometimes if they were making posters to the broader school community, that looked a little bit different than maybe some of the messages to an individual teacher of how to get involved. So we've also had a few questions of what does an audience mean and how do I pick an audience and what does that look like? So an audience is a group of people that you're looking to reach out to. And it can really be a whole bunch of different audiences, and we suggest before picking your top one or two, write down just a brainstorm of every audience that you think could be a game changer or someone that you would want to communicate that message out to. And the more specific we can be, the better chance we have of helping reach that specific audience. So for example, here's a few different audiences or groups that you might encounter rolling out a Grades of Green activity. There could be a group of students, a group of local businesses, teachers, maybe your city council, other schools that you'd like to work with, families, even more specifically, maybe there's student clubs, like maybe there's a student council on campus or another student group that you'd like to partner with. So first brainstorm all of the different groups that you may want to reach out to, and then,
And I was just going to add that even like the group students, that might even break down further. Like maybe there's athletes versus like the really smart kids versus, you know, some other type of student association that you might want to get involved with, you know, and speak to them differently.
I love that. So looking for shared interests, or what different ways to maybe group people together, and seeing where your allies may lie and how different people could be players in your activity as well. Mm-hmm. I love that idea. So once you've brainstormed all of the different audiences or groups, for this year we really suggest narrowing it down to just one or two audiences to reach out to for your first year. If you've been doing your activity in your second or your third year, maybe it's time to kick it up a notch and reach out to a few other groups as well. But if this is your first year, reaching out to a few solid audiences and really communicating well with them is the best way to kind of solidify and mobilize your student body in the very beginning. So for this example, potentially if you're a water challenge school and you're watching this, some key groups that may be helpful are student clubs to help you create posters. Maybe it's a student council, maybe it's an after school club or an after school program that you'd like to work with, and teachers. So depending on what program or activity you're working on, the audiences may differ a little bit. For example, if you're working on a styrofoam ban, you may want to add local businesses as one of the groups that you talk to the most. So depending on what your activity is, your audiences may shift, and your advisor is always there to help you select those groups. So if you're having any suggestions or brainstorming and you want someone to brainstorm with you, feel free to call or email your advisor and we can help you do that brainstorm process together. And we got this one, which I love, is what's the best form of communication? There are so many ways to communicate, and the truth is every audience may be a little bit different for how to meet them at where it's best for them to communicate and how to creatively communicate. So we've listed a few best practices and tips that we've had from other schools, but really this is where creativity can be as open and as big as you want. For example, we're working with a school right now in Rome, and their form of communication I thought was really interesting. They're actually going to work on litter reduction by hosting a flash mob. So they wanted.
Oh, how fun. Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
So we loved that. They wanted to reach the broader audience of their community, and the best way for them was to host a flash mob. So we're excited to see the results of those flash mobs next Thursday for World Water Day, and those can just be different creative ways. But here are some examples of different ways to communicate with your audiences. The first one could be creating posters. So if you're looking to reach a school audience, those posters could be hung around your school campus. If it's in a community, maybe it's hung in inside your community as well. You could write letters or articles to be published in a local newspaper or your school newspaper. And that's a great way to showcase your research, your opinion about something, and also to work with your advisor if you'd like them to take a look at your article before submitting it or work together on it. On our website, we have samples of different earth tips, different opinion pieces that other students have written. So feel free to go on our website under the Grades of Green team activity, and all of the earth tips and sample letters can be downloaded to use as a template or as a starting place if you're looking for some ideas. The next one are banners. This is a great way if you're doing something in your community and you want to set a goal or to publicize that goal, you can make banners. And flyers can also be a great way to have in a take-home packet, put in teacher boxes, or directly communicate your message to others in the community. Again, if you're looking for any sample flyers, or if you want any flyers where you can customize it, they're available on the Grades of Green website underneath each activity that you're working on. Here's a few examples of a flyer for a green festival and one for our No Idle Zone as well. Public speaking. This is a great way to reach your broader community. We've had students speak at city council meetings, at the state legislature, so different community outlets where you want to spread your word and spread the activity that you're working on to a broader audience. Community meetings and public speaking engagement opportunities are a great way to do that. Once you have your engagement opportunity locked down, if you want to practice with your advisor, feel free to email them, or you can comment in the comment section right now at info@gradesofgreen.org, and we'll make sure that there's someone over Skype who can help give you tips and feedback on your presentation as well.
I would also say, pardon me, and you know this from Social Venture Partners when we did Fast Pitch, it really helps if you can put your thoughts down on paper. It's a lot easier way to share it with an advisor in advance. They can read through it, they can have some ideas, so that when you guys get on the phone, you know, it's a time well spent. And the other thing you can do is, once you've kind of worked out the content of the speech, you can, you know, use your computer or your phone and actually show your advisor what you look like when you're speaking, because they say that 90% of you getting your message across is actually body language. So it matters more about how you're looking, you know, your audience in the eye, how often you're using your hands or not, you know, and just some of the other body language things that an advisor can help you with if you're using like your computer or your phone.
Oh, I love that. And I love that idea of filming and then sending it in advance.
Oh, that's a good idea too.
If you have a presentation, like maybe one of our walking assemblies that you're working on, and you want any feedback on it, feel free to record yourself doing the presentation and sending it as well, and we can provide feedback. I love that idea on your body language, on how your presentation is looking, and on your pitch and tone as well.
Perfect.
Cool. And the last one is social media. So feel free to use your own social media platforms, maybe your school's social media platforms, and Grades of Green is always here to spread the word as well. So if you're having an event, if there's something that you're working on campus, if there's anything related to your activity that you're really excited about and you want to spread the word, tag us at Grades of Green, and we can repost it as well to help champion your effort and to help others mobilize around it as well. So you can send it to your advisor, you can email it to info@gradesofgreen.org, or just tag us in it and we can repost it as well. So just to wrap that up before we move into some Q&As with Deborah, when you're doing your pathway to spread the word, the first thing you would want to do is review why it's important to yourself and other audiences. Challenge yourself to think about what the call to action or an action that you want your other groups to take is. Then brainstorm what those audiences or groups could look like. Narrow it down to just 1 or 2 audiences for that first year, and then select the mode of communication that may be the best to reach that audience. So if you're working with students, it may be social media. If you're working with your teachers, it may be a printed out flyer. So think about what's the best way for the audience to be communicated to, and meet them where they're at on that one as well. Now we're really excited for a Q&A. We got some questions which were great from our youth corps students and our students that were in other challenges as well. If you have any questions along the time when Deborah is talking as well, feel free to do the comment section and utilize that comment section for your questions. If we don't have time throughout this Q&A to get to them, we'll respond back, and Emily is responding back right now to comments, thank you. So as any live questions happen, or if you have any feedback, comment down below and give some thumbs up or a heart if what we're saying is useful, so we can incorporate more of it. Let's get started with the first question. Okay. So this one is from one of our youth corps students, and they asked, how many audiences or groups do you think we should start with if it's your first time with a project?
I think I'd say it depends. and it kind of depends on what your project is and what you're trying to achieve. So if what you're trying to do is build like your posse, then you probably want to be speaking to students. If you've already got a group that's really supportive of the efforts and you're ready to take the next step, maybe then you want to go to teachers, or then you want to go to someone in the community. So I'd say it really just depends, and you gave the best advice, like start with 1 or 2, you know, and then expand from there.
And really all movements start small. So if you're looking at a 2 or a 3-year project, if it is one group in the first year, that's great. We are so proud of working with one group in the beginning and partnering with them. That's a great Grades of Green activity.
Well, and sometimes, you know, the last thing you want to do is get up and speak publicly, but it's probably what you're going to need to do to get, you know, a whole group of people, you know, behind you. And so start with, you know, people that are going to make you feel comfortable.
This one I thought was a great question as well. When we have a lot of ideas, how can we narrow down our message if we have a lot to say, which I know a lot of our students do because we're also passionate?
Well, I think first of all, I realized that, you know, you have limited time because they have limited attention. And so while you may have a lot to say and you may know a lot and you might want to share a lot, it doesn't mean that the other person has that amount of time to learn all the detail that you know and actually really needs to know all of that to get involved. So I would really focus in on what's in it for them and what it is you want them to do, and I would structure your message about that. Because if there's, and you probably want to state the problem, and you want to talk about your solution, and then you want to talk about how to get them on board. And I narrow it down to kind of those 3.
I love that. So thinking about it from their perspective as well.
Yeah, super important.
And how do we choose the best audience that we should talk to first?
So first I would choose a friendly audience because you want to build your confidence and you also want to get feedback. So if you say to a group of friends, hey, I want to give this speech to you because I want you to tell me, I want you to be really honest with me and tell me what worked, what didn't work, and what suggestions you would have. So I would start with a friendly audience to get feedback. And then next I would think about how you're going to create your crowd or your posse or that group of people that are going to be there with you to kind of like show a force, to show that it's more than just you. You know, there's actually a lot of kids that think this way and that you want to take this kind of action. So I would think second about how do you build that group so that it's not just you going somewhere, it's a group of you going somewhere. And then third, I would say who can help influence what you're trying to do. And then I'd want to get some of those people, you know, involved.
I love that. And I think that last point too is really resonates with a lot of the Grades of Green projects I've seen. If you're looking for something that may be more infrastructure change, like you want to add a hydration station to your campus, or you're looking to add a sorting station, if there's something where you're looking to change something on campus, some of those groups may be the most helpful to really start expanding that message and that word. So you may have to do a little bit of research on who helps make those decisions on campus.
Do you want to put your thing?
Thank you. The next one is, how do we know when we're saying something that it's working or that it's resonating with an audience?
Ideally, you will know what you have to say and you'll be so passionate about it that you won't have to be thinking about something you've memorized. And if you know your topic, kind of like you are when you're talking, you'll be able to look people in the eye, and when you look them in the eye, you're going to see whether or not they're looking back at you. You're going to see whether or not their eyes are glazed over. You're going to see whether or not they're on the phone. You're going to see them nodding. You're going to see them like sitting on the edge and leaning forward, leaning in, because then they're really engaged. If people are sitting back, if they're talking to somebody else, if they're on their phone, you're probably not hitting the mark, and that might be you and it might be them. So I wouldn't always take that personally, but if you have a whole room of people that are not paying attention to you, then you need some of that feedback to figure out how you can be more effective.
I love that one. And then the last one is, how will we know if we've succeeded in reaching that group or a bunch of groups?
Well, my suggestion is to always start with the end in mind. So know what metric you are looking to meet. So if you want to measure your success, then know up front it's going to be about the number of kids that sign up, it's the number of teachers you talk to, it's whether or not they say yes. So figure out what your metrics are, and then you'll be able to measure yourself along the way.
I I love that. And as you're going through your project, if you would like any help at all establishing a goal, what's a realistic goal? How do I create that goal, and how do I help meet that goal? These are all great questions to ask a fellow student, ask your Grades of Green advisor, or comment right now in the comment section, and we can get back to those in real time right now as well. So I love all of those suggestions about how to really take your Grades of Green project to the next level, and especially right now in this portion of the school year, we've got Earth Month coming up next month, which is a great time to tie into the broader conversation that's happening, and it's the end of the year. So we know so many of those great Grades of Green activities that you've been working on are really wrapping up, and you're really ramping them up to make real change happen at school, which we're really excited to hear about. Awesome. Deborah, any other last words before we kind of wrap up for today?
I think just, thank you for all the projects that you're leading, for the change you're trying to make. One of the reasons I'm on the board is to try to help fund, Grades of Green, so that we can reach more students and we can make, greater change.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Deborah, for joining us today. And from the New York office, we are so excited to work with you. Let us know how we can help you, how we can continue to mobilize our effort and move forward. And feel free to comment below with any questions. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.